Right, so got my next special guest on the show now, and on today's show we're touching on some important issues really, which need to be addressed. And on the show now, I've got Piers Linney. Welcome to the show, Piers. It's great to have you on the Danny Sun syndicated show.
Thanks for having me on.
Welcome, and I just want to start by introducing you on. You're a successful businessman and entrepreneur, and was being a successful businessman something you always aspired to be when you were kind of growing up?
Um, yeah, I always wanted to be in business, but no one really knew what the hell that was when I was growing up or what,
Yeah,
what I wanted to do. And I had businesses for my first one. I was 13, which was a paper round business where I bought the papers from the wholesaler. So I always wanted to be in business. But when I said that where I was growing up, which was a mill town in Lancashire, everybody said, "Oh, well, you need to become an accountant." That was the extent of the advice
yeah.
I got.
Great stuff. And would you describe yourself as a entrepreneur, um,
Yeah,
enterpriser?
so an entrepreneur is someone who, there's business owners and there's entrepreneurs. An entrepreneur is someone that takes on risk really.
Yeah.
So, sometimes just to survive, but usually to grow a business. So I started life as a lawyer and in the city as an investment banker and hedge fund manager. But I was always had a business on the side, whether I was at university doing my A levels, which I did twice, at law school, at university, when I was doing my training contracts as a lawyer. I always had what they now call a side hustle, although it shouldn't be a hustle, should take a bit more seriously than that. But I always had that. So I was always in the game really. And that's because I could see how that's why I could create real sort of personal wealth. I don't mean like yachts and nonsense like that. I'm on about just my first one was to buy a BMX that otherwise couldn't afford. I understood that finding a niche, working hard, knowing who your customers were, what they wanted, I mean, you could have a bit more financial freedom.
Yeah. Amazing. And listeners may know you from Secret Millionaire. That was going back about 9 years ago. It's a Channel 4 show where millionaires kind of give to kind of like not so well off communities. Is that right? That program was kind of
Yeah,
based
Secret
on.
Millionaire was more about it was about communities because you actually went to spend time in the community, and it was about individual stories quite often.
Mm,
And I mean, the report out today that I've been talking about is Alone Together, which is about being a Black, Asian, minority ethnic, and your ability to get on in life compared to other
mm,
people, your white counterparts. From looking at it that way. And the quick story I'll lead into is when I was doing the Secret Millionaire, the program they showed prison of the young offenders. One of the guys I met there is called Daniel, and cut a very long story short, he was in there for some serious stuff. He'll fess up to that. And when he got out, he usually probably ended up back in prison because he was very, very bright, but not challenged. He'd already been in prison, couldn't get a job, made it even worse. You get this circle, don't you, of reoffending. And I gave him a bit of help, a bit of an opportunity, a bit of guidance. I trained him as an IT consultant. Years later, 9 years later, as you correctly pointed out to make him feel old, he's now an IT consultant earning twice the national average. He's got a partner, a young son, and he's contributing to society. And all I did was give him some social capital. And that could be the difference between success and failure. And what this research does, I'm sure we'll talk about, is it identifies that BAME entrepreneurs, despite investing more actually, working harder, having the same education, starting the same number of businesses, they're not as successful. And why is that? And often that kind of guidance I gave Daniel is the answer.
that's a very heartwarming story, and we are going to go into that subject very shortly. Just want to say you've done Dragon's Den as well for a few years. And you also work close with the British Business Bank. What is the organisation about for the benefit of the listeners who don't know what the British Business Bank's about?
I thought you were going to mention Dragon's Den then.
Oh, oh,
British Business, British Business Bank is it's a government development bank. So it's become its profile has been raised more recently because it was behind a lot of the government programs that were put in place to support businesses through debt finance and the future fund, which is equity. So I'm a non-exec director of British Business Bank. So I sit on the board, on the main board, and they commission this research. One of the issues about being an entrepreneur, about success, is access to capital. And not just about is it there, it's about do you know it's there? And do you think that you're able to access it? So British Business Bank is one of its sort of objectives is to help small businesses and entrepreneurs access capital. So it commissioned this research to sort of try and work out who has a problem, who can't access it, and what do we do about it.
mhm. Great stuff. Thank you for explaining that. And moving on to what we are talking about mainly today, we're addressing diversity in business, in particular Asian communities, black communities, and what more can be done to raise awareness on this matter?
So the thing is that a lot of today, this is quite an important piece of research. This is why I've been sort of I'm championing it, is because today really it's been anecdotal, or I was aware that there were barriers. So I liken it to a running race where you start the 100 meters, you've got all the same gear, you've done the same prep, you're physically the same, but you're starting 20 meters back because your socioeconomic background, and then you realise on your side there's hurdles, and then you realise even worse than that, some of the hurdles are invisible. So the point is that everyone should be on the start line and have the same race. How you do in that race is up to you, your innovation and your ability, and how much hard work you put in. And that's what this is about, and why I'm championing it.
It's amazing what you're doing, to be fair. And I've got a few bullet notes here, and it says on my notes, black entrepreneurs report lower turnover, profit than white entrepreneurs, respectively. And also black female business owners and female owners from Asian and other ethnic minorities experience the lowest level of business success. In those notes, is that an accurate kind of description?
Yes, I think you've got to break it down a bit. So if you're Asian, you probably do better. If you're Black African, maybe a little worse. If you're Black Caribbean, probably even worse. I'm being generic now. And if you're a woman, this is also a gender issue, not just a race issue. Then you do even worse. And if you're a woman, you've even got more hurdles, both visible and invisible. So they're struggling even more. So there's different facets to this issue. So the summary is right. It's lower turnover. Another big one is people just don't meet their aspirations, whatever they may be. So it's kind of tangible, but also intangible. And the point I like to make is that this is not a zero-sum game. It's not, well, if they make more money, I make less. It's not a pie that we're trying to carve up. The pie should be massively bigger, because we're leaving tens of billions on the table in terms of GDP, people paying tax, making money, because we're not connecting talent, a lot of it, with opportunity. And we're not helping that talent understand that they can actually go after and there's opportunities and fulfill their ambitions.
Okay, and since the turn of the millennium, do you think we have come some way of kind of making business fairer for everyone, or is there still a long way to go to kind of make the business kind of sector equal for everyone?
I mean, it's not just about business; it's about just generally. That's
generally, yeah.
What this piece of research has focused on, though, is unconscious, conscious bias, and systemic or structural difficulties or barriers, whatever you want to call it, based on the colour of your skin, which, let's face it, in this day and age is complete and utter nonsense, and it shouldn't exist. So I think what this really is about is, now we've got the data, you can have a conversation. So this is going to feed into the government commission on ethnic race, it's called now, disparities because you're race or ethnicity. And that's quite important. So we're starting at the top and working down, but from the bottom working up, it's about all of us thinking about it and saying, well, what can I do about it? Can I support an entrepreneur? Do I invest in underrepresented entrepreneurs? Do I recruit people with this unconscious bias that we're talking about here? And just think about it. And all those little changes add up to big change.
That's true. And can one's economic background, growing up in a family, a well-off family, and where they live, play a part in someone being a successful businessman? It's kind of like having that head start in life.
Yeah. Well, that was my analogy about the 20 meters back. So, again, you kind of expect this, wouldn't you? That if you come from a family that has more money, you can probably take more risks. You can talk to friends and family for that capital to get you going. If it doesn't work out, you can maybe start again. It's not everything. You haven't literally everything you've got onto the red square. Now, startup loans is run by a British Business Bank as well. So if you don't have access to that kind of early stage seed capital that you need just to start your tech company or your coffee shop, whatever it is, then startup loans is there. And what's interesting with startup loans stats is that a disproportionate amount, in a positive way, of the entrepreneurs applying are from ethnic minority backgrounds, which I think tells you something about the ethic.
And I have some statistics here. London, the capital, is the toughest place in the United Kingdom to be an entrepreneur. Just 71% of London business owners reported a profit in 2019, as opposed other regions in the country averaged 84%.
Yeah,
And
so again, you kind of expect that aspect because it's very easy to get lost in the all businesses are online now, and your customer could be anywhere in the world. That's not, most small businesses are quite local, and it is your butcher, baker, candlestick maker in many cases, your corner shop. It's not just some tech business trying to be the next Airbnb. So if you look at that, London, there's more people and it's more competitive. So that doesn't surprise me. The good news is, if you're not in London, then there's more chance of success. So maybe that tells us something about the levelling up agenda, which seems to fit in quite nicely with that.
I mean, obviously with London, they've got the soaring costs, cost of living and operating. Seeing many business proprietors kind of moving out of the capital now. Like I was reading that the southeast, northeast, even where I live, Midlands, is quite a prosperous area to kind of invest in at the moment.
Well, there's entrepreneurs everywhere, and I think that when you're in a small business, the people you tend to raise money from, unless it's the startup loans or some venture capital firm down the line, are people who know you and people from your local community and people who understand the market, which often is quite local. So it's important that, going back to your question about what you do about it, that locally that you actually try and make a difference. Just start there.
I suppose just
become an angel investor. You don't have to invest tens of thousands. £1,000 could be it could be a lot of money to a lot of people. £1,000 could be the difference between somebody starting a business and not starting a business.
And I just wanted to touch, coming towards the end of the interview now, but I just got one kind of piece I wanted to touch on, was female entrepreneurs from ethnic minority backgrounds experience the greatest difference. So again, more than a third of black female business owners from Asian and other ethnic minorities reported making no profit against 15% of white female business owners.
So that's the other facet of this, which is, I said earlier, that it's not just about race, it's about gender. So, and you've got to be generic, and the research sort of covers this a little bit, is that what are the reasons for that? So generally, the reasons, these hurdles are about social capital, about access to finance. But if you're female, a woman, then maybe it's about, well, actually, I've got childcare issues or other caring issues, or I didn't get the education I wanted at the time because I was bringing up children, whatever the issues are. But over that sample, which is a real sample, there's research to be done on, is that it shows an issue that it's about gender as well, which is, so if you're Black Caribbean and a woman, then you really are. You're not 20 meters back from the start. You're 50.
It's very interesting, that is. And on my final notes, it says, in general, female business owners from all ethnicities experience considerable average turnover than the male entrepreneurs. Yeah.
So again, it depends on your measure of success. It could be turnover, it could be profit. It could be very difficult in a small company to focus on those numbers because the money can go out very easily and make a big difference. Whether it's your aspirations, whether if you're just trying to pay the rent or buy a yacht, whatever the aspiration is, people aren't actually achieving them. It can be turnover, it can be profit, whatever the measure. It seems that people with Black, Asian, and minority ethnic backgrounds are not achieving where there's no reason why they shouldn't be, which means it's a systemic issue that at some point, starting now ideally, we've got the data, we need to deal with it.
Right. And finally, on my last question I was going to ask, obviously we're in difficult times and hardships. What advice could you give someone setting up a business in this current climate?
So, I know people in the current climate that are killing it. They're doing really, really well. I know people that, especially in hospitality, they're really struggling. The point about starting a business is don't just start a business based on the current climate, because it will, hopefully, it will change and we'll get through this pandemic. I think what it has done is mean the technology is more important to make sure that these kind of shocks don't affect people as much down the line. So think about, if your high street's essentially shut, what happens to your business? Think about being online, accessing customers that way. But the key end of the day in any business is try and find a way of adding value to someone's life, make them healthier, wealthier, happier, whatever it is. do something better, cheaper or better, and then understand what your customers want and listen to them, improve your products or service, and then just try and grow it from there. That's the key to it.
That's great advice in a nutshell as well. I just want to say thanks for talking to me today, Piers Linney, on this issue to do with disparity, and hopefully the figures will kind of balance out.
Well,
with it.
we can't hope, we have to do something, but at least we've got the data now to tell us, hopefully, what we need to do as a starting point. So thank you for having me on.
You're great stuff talking with you today on the syndicated show, me, Danny. Wonderful.